This morning I had something rather special arrive in my PO box, and it is this. A cornet made by a fellow by the name of R De Lacy. It is, he built it according to the stamp on the top when he lived at 10 Millbrook Road, Brixton in London. Now, it's very difficult to date an instrument like this. Well, it's normally quite difficult to date an instrument like this because many manufacturers didn't necessarily always bother with serial numbers, and I cannot for the life of me find a serial number anywhere on this instrument. However, for some reason, instead of using a serial number, he has put his address on there. And according to some newspapers that I found that have been archived on the internet, he lived at 10 Millbrook Road in Brixton somewhere in the early to mid 1870s, which means this cornet is around 140 years old. Now, as a result of that, of its age, there are some things that are not very functional. For instance, there are some massive air leaks in this instrument, and I think it's largely because the valves, you can actually wobble them from side to side. There is a considerable amount of play in the valves, and I think to make that any better, you would actually need to make the valves almost a millimetre wider in diameter. So as a result of that, the tone that you get from this instrument is a bit disappointing, as you'll hear from later on in the video when I do try to play something on it. But there are a number of really interesting design elements that I want to show you. So what I'm going to do is take this camera, set it up on my bench, and walk you through some of those design elements, because me holding this thing up and wiggling it around is probably not the best way for you to appreciate some of the details in this instrument's creation. Right, so the first thing I want to show you is this lead pipe. This lead pipe is actually not from this instrument. It's actually off another cornet that I've got that's also very old. But this is what the instrument arrived when I got it. It actually came with a trombone mouthpiece, which the previous owner must have thought went like that. But for obvious reasons, that's not the best solution for this instrument. So what we can see first off is that the design around the third valve is quite different to what we see nowadays. If we take for a moment the standard B-flat cornet that you would get these days, you can see that it is a little bit more expanded in design. It's a little bit bigger in design. The lead pipe comes and follows the same general path. It comes from here and it ends in the third valve there. However, on this cornet, the design is a lot more compact. It's a lot shorter and stubbier than what we would have with the modern cornet. And so the lead pipe has this big wide turn here. The tuning slide is here, and it actually interleaves through the tubes of the third valve tuning slide. Now, I don't know why instruments of this age have that as characteristic. It's not the first time I've seen this sort of thing, but it is something that I'm very interested about, because surely to make this complex turn here, have it move at a different plane and making it a 3D part instead of just a standard two-dimensional curve, would surely be very complicated, and why they've gone to that effort, I really don't know. The spring mechanism and the water key are also very interesting. What we've got is actually two water keys on the main lead pipe, and so we've got a branched water key, as you can see here. The two water keys actuated by a single lever. That in itself is quite interesting, and we can see the mount that it has in here. But what makes this even more peculiar is that they don't use a standard spring. A normal spring these days is a piece of wire tightly coiled up, but no, in here they use a leaf spring, which you might be able to see down in here. It's a piece of metal under tension and with a curve on it, and when you push this, it just flexes it, sort of like shock absorbers in an old style trailer where they've got leaf springs, and this is that sort of a thing. Hopefully you can see the maker's mark on here, R De Lacy, 10 Millbrook, R De Lacy maker, 10 Millbrook Road, Brixton, London. There is no serial number on this instrument that I can see. If I zoom in a little bit to see the valve caps here, there's actually a lot of intricate knurling that's been done here, and I don't know whether that would have had to have been hand done or whatever the case is. If we take the valves out, or take a valve out, we've got just the top of the valve here, and we've got a very corroded and worn down piece of metal. I don't know what sort of metal this is, and it is quite clearly very, very worn. It would have been plated with something. What they would have had in the 1870s to plate metal with, I just simply don't know, but we can see a little bit of underlying metal there, but the rest is all corroded. Now, as I say, this valve, when you put it inside the casing, it wobbles something shocking. So it's never going to get a decent seal around the valves, and as I said earlier in this video, that is the reason why when I try to play this, it doesn't play very well. It plays with a whole lot of air leaks and things of that nature. As I've said a couple of times during this video, there is a lot of leaks in this instrument, so the sound isn't very good, but I'm going to still give you guys a demo of what it does sound like because I think you're all interested in hearing it. So what I'm going to play is a little bit of Chopin for you.